here we go. What is the Maths Tutor? Well, it's Ireland's leading online system for maths, and that is a fact. Okay. It was set up in 2011 by a man named Eamon Toland, who's up there in Ballina, County Mayo. Uh, our other panelist on here tonight is Andrea Conroy, who's also up in that neck of the woods. And, together they built this fantastic platform. And I remember I met him in 2011. He told me about his idea, and I just thought it was absolutely brilliant. And I've used it with my students ever since, and still to this day. So, why it's great is this: it's the most comprehensive library of videos organized sequentially and also by exam year. So, in essence, it gives you everything you need to learn the whole maths course by yourself. Okay. And there are students who've done it, students who would be at home for whatever reason they can't attend school, who have just used the maths tutor as their primary way of learning maths. So it can be done. However, we know human nature, why schools exist at all, why they're still needed, is because, of course, very few people can get themselves and motivate themselves to just learn maths through that. Like most people have to be taught by a teacher in a kind of live environment. However, when you need the help, the maths tutor is the best thing out there. And I can guarantee you that. What it does is it complements the in-school teaching and learning. Okay, so as I said, I teach every day in a place called Hamilton High School in Bandon, County Cork. And like, what are my students doing? Like, what's part of their homework? It is to go onto the maths tutor and watch the videos. And I'll give an example of exactly what I mean by that shortly. So what the Maths Tutor was a standalone company for a long time, but emerged with the Tuition Centre in summer 2023. As Dan said, I'm Owen O'Leary, the head of maths here at the Tuition Centre. And what we genuinely believe that we have is the best of both worlds. Like, I deliver the live lessons every week for my students. Tuesday nights, we have the sixth years, the H3 to H6 and the H1 to H2. And Thursday nights, I have the fifth years, and there's the other options that Dan said. And students love those because students would, a lot of students, teenagers naturally, will tell me that they need that kind of live push on them to say, okay, off you go, do that question now and tell me what answer you got. They need that kind of thing to push them on. However, they all will go back and use the maths tutor in particularly in certain circumstances, which I'm going to get to. But like that, Dan mentioned that we have the midterm revision courses coming up. So a lot of students who use the maths tutor a lot will then come to the tuition center to do the live parts. So the feedback from past pupils on the maths tutor is this. Okay. And I'm a great guy for taking surveys and stuff like that, as a lot of my students will know. What people have always said is this, my own students included over all the years, the more you use the maths tutor, the more you want to use it. So, for example, I know this to be the case because maths is such a wide course. Sometimes when people use it for the very first time, when they click onto the maths tutor, they're like, oh my God, there's so much stuff here. But the greatness of it is there's so much stuff. But you got to get into it and kind of use it a few times before you really see the power of it. So I'm going to hope to convince you tonight exactly why you will start using it. Some people love this. They love to be able to rewind and watch the difficult parts again. So I'm not sure, would this be true for any of you? You can say yes or no into the chat. Is like, would some of you be shy to ask a question inside in your regular lessons in school? You mightn't like to kind of say, oh, I don't get that part, I didn't understand what you're saying there, sir. And like, look, there comes it, like a flood of yeses, that like, that a lot of people, that's just human nature. And I will say, even since COVID, I found even more of that from students. Of course, some students are very happy to ask questions, but some people just, they prefer, they're really happy with the fact that they can watch the video, rewind the difficult part, watch it again. Okay. And this is something I would say last year, 6 years. So Madam said this to me in the end, because I really encourage people to use it and use it a lot. And so many of them said this, I wish I'd used it earlier. Now, you guys, obviously, some of you can type this into the chat. Can you tell me what class you were in or what year you were in March 2020? Okay. Like, were you in first year in school? Were you in second year in school? Were you in second class in primary school? So it's a mixture here. We're going from second year on the high side, and I think that's as old as you could be as such. Second year. Am I right about that? Would you even, yeah, so maybe a second year, you might be repeating the Leaving Cert, maybe. A lot of you were sixth class, some of you were in third class, some of you fourth class, you know. But what happened in that time was people missed out on stuff, you know, regardless of whatever class you were in. You know, my children are in primary school, sixth class, fourth class, second class. And if they missed now, you know, 3 solid months now, and then another few months again afterwards, and had all the online stuff, they're just going to miss out on topics. It's the same for everyone. And what I notice all the time is students have weaknesses in their maths, but it's different for different people because it depends what the teacher was teaching you in March 2020. Because pretty much, you know, nothing happened for a whole host of students after that. So people have these gaps in their knowledge. And this is one thing people say, everything is there. Everything is there and the maths tutor. Why is it students need the extra support? This is a fact. Overall, students are behind the equivalent students in 2019. So if you're sixth year now, if there was a sixth year, if you was a clone of you back in 2019, in sixth year, they knew more maths than you. It's just the way it is because you lost out on all that time. The Leaving Cert is as tough as ever. There's a bit of choice in the maths exams. However, you got to know all the content. Students somehow need to spend extra time studying maths to bridge the gap. Okay. Somehow it has to be done to bridge that gap. And the maths tutor can be that bridge. I've just got two more slides and then I'm going over to the actual platform then. Okay. So the maths tutor can be the bridge that helps fill in the gaps in your knowledge and helps you to do that extra work to bring you back up to where you would have been. This is from these guys here. Dan mentioned the 21-day maths challenge, right? So all these people do this course running up to the Leaving Cert, right? 21 days, hour a night, prepping. We go through the whole course and they run up to the exam. On the day of their Leaving Cert, they fill in a survey. So last year we could see like from 597 of them filled in this, right? And so it's anonymous, right? So they say this, they tell me what grade they got in their mocks. So you can see the bell curve there, right? It's like 12% H8s, maybe 1 or 2% H1s. And those exact same students, what grade did they get in their Leaving Cert? Okay. So obviously it's coming up to 20% H1s, you know, 22% H2s. Obviously the H8s and the H7s are gone, you know. So let me go back to this, right? So like, you know, we're talking about like a quarter of the students got a H8 or a H7 in their mocks, and then like none of them in the exam. Okay, all of them did the 21-day challenge, fair enough. But what happens as well as that between those times is students find the motivation to do the extra work because in February, this is where they are and they're under pressure and they're getting worried, you know, and they're obviously all these H8s. And remember, all of these people did the higher level Leaving Cert. But obviously, if they get a H8 in the Leaving Cert, they're under pressure in the pre, like, you know, they need to find another 20%. And that's when they'll then go on and they might use the maths tutor a lot. However, one thing I will say, and I'll base this on, I'm going to jump out of this here now, right? I'll base this on, there was 2 students came back to our school this week, right? The reason they came back from their course in college was because they both got 100% in their Leaving Cert maths. Okay, perfect score. And anyway, the certificates given out by, you know, so these guys were getting these certs, right? Because they'd done it. I asked them, I took the opportunity to ask them, you know, what made the difference? What advice would you give to these lads? And the first thing that struck me is neither of them got a H1 in their pre. So they weren't saying like, oh, it's all simple, blah, blah, blah. You know? They talked about consistent work over time and they talked about understanding the questions. So what I'm looking at here is I enrolled here as if I was a Leaving Cert student, right? So if I click here in this one in the middle, right? I'll just show you this. These are all the past exam papers. So, you know, regardless of if you're studying any of the exam papers, right? What you have, of course, here, the 2024 is up there now. So you got the papers, you got the marking schemes, and you got all the questions. So let me think of a question there from last year, which was good. I click on this financial maths one here for a second, right? Can I open this one? Or do I need to do something else? Okay, I think it's opening up there for me. So this was last year's financial maths, right? So this was question 7. And so just to show you here, you have your PDF of the question. You have your, so your question is there. You have your marking scheme as well, but you have the video. Okay. So I'll just click on this for a second. We're on to paper 1, question 7 of 2024 higher level Leaving Cert Maths. This was, I'm hoping you can hear that. So you'll see that question there, so right there's the question up on the board. It's about FIA. Even the junior cycle students might be familiar with this. So it was a Leaving Cert higher level question, but really it was a junior cycle question. We'd never seen it at the higher level before. But obviously, what you see here, I'm going to mute myself on the video, right, just so it doesn't get confusing, right? But you're going to see. Yes. Hello. Can you hear me, Andrea? Let me see one thing here now. For some reason, I heard someone saying hello there. I think it must have been Andrea. But I'm presuming you can hear me fine there. But what you can see there on the screen is obviously me going through the video. Okay. And you'll see, it's all done out there in PowerPoint, and I'm highlighting the key bits and, hopefully making it as easy as possible for people to understand it. So let me just check this. Very good. Oh, yes. I'm told there you can hear me fine. So, okay. So what you have there, you can see that was a nice little question for students to get the ball rolling on that last year. Now, that's there for everything. So as we know, a lot of your homework could be, to do exam paper questions, particularly as the year goes on. And if you're stuck in it and you can't understand it, you have the solution here. You can listen to myself or some of the teachers from the older videos going through them. Okay. Same as there, obviously, if you're doing Leaving Cert Ordinary, if you're doing junior cycle, higher level, junior cycle, ordinary level. Okay. And I find those resources to be great, and students do as well, particularly on the run up to the actual exam itself, right? But what I find, and this is what I had my students do over the weekend, was this. Let me click back into here. So if I go down here, so and it was Chenza and Ruth said that they were studying statistics, right? Okay, so it's up here. Statistics was here. So this is Leaving Cert higher level statistics, all the resources that are available. Now, if you look through this is representations, the first one, like, just representing data. Okay. Now, you have every sort of microscopic topic that you want to learn about there. And why we have it all there is because, again, if it happened that you didn't learn this when you were in junior cycle for whatever reason, maybe because of COVID, maybe because you were getting your tonsils out, you missed a week, maybe because you were at a match and you didn't kind of learn about histograms. It's all there, everything that you could possibly need. So my students, so I have a 6th-year class this year, right? They had an exam today, and it was on statistics 1 and 2, okay, from Leaving Cert. So it was everything except for inferential statistic, and this was their homework. Their homework over the weekend was to look at all these parts here. They're short little videos, okay? I'll show you. To look at this part here about, the mean, the summary statistics, right? And a lot of them would say, oh, well, I don't need to see the mean, right? I know that one for sure. And they might say, I don't need to know about the median, but they might say, oh, yeah, quartiles. And they might say, yeah, I remember something about quartiles, but I don't remember too much about it. And they might watch that video on quartiles. Okay. And again, like, it's a 9-minute video, and you can watch it on faster speed as well if you want to. Some people like to do that, Joe. So everything is there. But as well as that, you then have the kind of perfect questions. So again, if we're down here, right? Again, if you're a student who's struggling a bit with this, right, you start off here with these exam questions and you see the JCO, that means junior cert ordinary level. So they're really straightforward questions for if you're a leaving cert higher level student, but it's just bringing you back into it. Then there's junior cert higher level, right? Then there's leaving cert ordinary level. So all of this part here is kind of like introductory kind of stuff, reminding you. But then you're getting into variability and you're talking about more complicated ones here. So, you're getting into the interquartile range, which is a bit more difficult. And then you see this one here, leaving sort of higher level question about the labor force, the median interquartile range percentages. With the standard deviation here, like the concept of standard deviation, there's a lot in it, So again, the person that knows very little about it and wants to learn it, the person who is away, maybe they were gone off to, there's a student, would you believe he's gone on holidays this week, right? But he can be watching all those videos if he missed that in class. The empirical rule, obviously, important concept, and you can see the standard of questions getting more difficult. Leaving cert higher level, leaving cert ordinary level. So you got all those questions in there, and then you're into correlation. So correlation now, no, that's no longer a junior cycle topic. So you're getting into the harder parts all the time here. So leaving cert ordinary level, leaving cert higher level. And it keeps going from there. But the point about it was my students had to know everything from topics 1 to 4 for their exam today. And I will say the exam was tough, but the results were good. The exam was tough, but the results were good. So students will, if they get into it, will start to use this as their go-to thing when they're preparing for exams. And I will say that's what I found again today. So I just asked Chinsada, if you just could you just ask that question again for me, and I'll definitely show what's needed there. So again, you got everything here, right? And this is just statistics, and there's inferential statistics, which is a tough topic, and you can see there, like everything says LCH, leaving cert higher level. So, and see here, like there's kind of enough in there for even for the teachers. There's extra detail in there that if a teacher is even wondering, God, I don't know about this part here, like, because it really is, some of the inferential stats is really hard. The p-values is one that people always find tough. There's enough there to teach yourself the whole thing, but equally you can have it there to prepare for your leaving cert. Okay, I'm going to jump out of this again, and I'm going to jump in now to what some of the others were talking about. A lot of people doing calculus at the moment. Okay, so let me show you this, and then we might, if anyone else here wants me to show another topic, I will, or I can jump over then into some of the junior cycle stuff. So I think I just did a whistle stop tour there. Trigonometry is one. Again, I just mentioned trigonometry, right? Because it's one, it's something, right? Before, I could go off on a tangent here, which isn't a geometry pun or anything like that. But like trigonometry used to be such a big topic in the junior cycle before. It used to be massive. We used to learn the sine rule in junior cert. We used to learn loads of stuff, the area of the triangle using the trigonometric formula. But it's been stripped down to very little now in the junior cert. But then there's a massive amount needed for leaving cert. So loads of students would use it for that reason, to catch up, to bridge that gap. So here we are, we're in calculus, so functions leads on to calculus. So of course we're starting off with differentiation. And we're talking about differentiating by rule, and the derivative as the slope of the tangent. And we've got differentiation by first principles down here, linear and quadratic functions from first principles. That was one I was tipping last year to come up in the exam, and sure enough, it did. And I think if I'm right, the one that came up in the exam was quite like the example that's right in there. So, and then once we get in, remember you're coming into the product rule, the quotient rule, the chain rule. The chain rule part 2, more examples using the chain rule. So this is done out. Remember, this was developed in over a decade, and more, like bit by bit, going back to the students, going back to teachers, asking them what more do they need. So, for example, like if I look here at log derivatives, like this is complicated stuff, like, derivatives of logs and what does it mean? And even if I go back actually to this one, right? Rates of change, applications of differentiation, because I know some of the students today, I know some students who got an exam on this tomorrow. In fact, there's a student on here who's got an exam in applications of differentiation tomorrow. So maybe I will click on this to show this idea, rates of change. People get all bogged down in rates of change. But you can see here, this is rates of change part one, and I've silenced it there, right? Just so there's not two voices going. Maybe I'll just press play just for 1 second.
Which involves an application of calculus. Usually in these questions, we're given a function where the distance is related to time. In this case, the distance is given by e.
So in this case, right, there's an explanation there, bit by bit. It's not just here's your leaving cert answer. It's explaining what it's all about. And you can see there the extra information added in, speed formula, and so on and so forth. So I'll scroll down on my left-hand side here rather than flicking back to that other part. But if I go in here, you see, I actually think that like textbooks have a difficulty because they have to put in the kind of certain amount of stuff. They have to do it a certain way. They're kind of dictated somewhat by the department. But rates of change can somehow be made to seem way more difficult when you're reading it from a textbook. But like here we got rates of change 2, rates of change 3, and rates of change 3 involving the chain rule. So many students struggle with this. It's come up, I'm going to say, for the last 4 years in a row in the Leaving Cert. Definitely 4 out of the last 5, but I think 4 in a row. And students struggle with this all the time. I'm mute it again there and just show you the type of example. So a spherical balloon is inflated at 20 centimeters cube per second. At what rate is the radius increasing when the radius is 3 centimeters? Now, obviously that's not that easy a question, but this is a classic Leaving Cert question. And even if I could just go back to here, I was at Dan mentioned that I'm kind of heavily involved in the Irish Maths Teachers Association, and we hosted a webinar there for teachers recently where we discussed the marking scheme. And the person who was discussing the marking scheme, I'm just going to press play on this bit, right? Because I bet you this is what they say here is what he was saying. The guy who had corrected that Leaving Cert paper 1 in the year just gone, and he made this point.
Time is dr dt. And we can find that by saying that dr dv multiplied by dv dt is equal to dr dt. Because you see, these dv's will cancel each other out, and we're just left with dr dt. Now we have the dv dt.
And like, if you could imagine if you listen to that the day before you go in to do this inside in school, some people do it that way, and they're so far ahead then when they go in because they've already been taught it. But the beauty of it is it's all done out in this logical way, this sequential way that's been taught out and adjusted over the years. And as well, something that a lot of people like is there's some old Leaving Cert questions, like 2000 and we'll say 13, 14, 15, that might not be in your exam papers, but are here on this with the question, the marking scheme, and also then the video as well. So they're here in the sequential part. Okay, let me jump back here for a second because I can see a couple of questions coming in. If you now at this point want to ask any questions, feel free to. And again, you can see how much is in there. This is in calculus, and look at that all for integration. And integration was such an important part in last year's Leaving Cert. Okay. Now, I will read this out just in case I forget. Dan has sent this to me, right? But I think we need to send that to everybody. So I think we'll send that out to everybody. All participants in this website will get 30% off the midterm maths masterclass. You just have to contact. Okay, so let me do this. I'm going to send this to everybody. So you just got to contact Dan. So you can see his email address there. Okay. All right. So that's good news. So you can see what Dan's referring to there is that I have a couple of courses running at midterm. So for fifth years, there's a fifth year algebra one. And for sixth year, it's sixth year differentiation actually. And so what it is over 3 hours, for the fifth years, I cover all the algebra. For the sixth years, I cover all of the key things at differentiation. Okay, back to the maths tutor. Is there anyone there who has a question? Anyone who would like me to look at a particular topic? What I'm going to do here is this, right? I just jumped screen there, but this is the trigonometry, right? Because I know that was mentioned there earlier. And again, right, even if you look at this is trigonometry basics. And if you're studying trigonometry, like it's all there. Like, let me ask this, right? A lot of you are Leaving Cert students. Who would admit here that they are not very sure of the unit circle, the Leaving Cert? So you can type me into the chat. Yeah, and sure, look at there's lots of people. Oh, it's something that I find right, all the time that students like. Again, we used to do the unit circle when we were in school. The unit circle is cast, CAST, are also terribly confusing. You know that the circle with the four quadrants, and we used to have a we used to spend a week at it. I'm telling you. I actually one of the students has just said it's a very good video on that topic. So fair play. This student has watched it. So I'm going to click on it now to see. Because again, I'm going to tell you, this is so hard to learn from a textbook to read it yourself. Right? I'll just silence it there. But when it's done out properly, as we can see here, it's done out with a bit of thinking about it, a bit of explanation, in involving right angle triangles. All of a sudden, then the whole thing makes sense. You know, it makes sense. And what could seem so confusing before, in 12 minutes and 29 seconds, can be all sorted for you and can clear up a whole host of problems because it comes up all the time inside in the Leaving Cert. Okay. One student asked me to look at probability for sixth year, and then I'll go to probability for the junior cycle as well. So if I look down here, right, so probability for Leaving Cert, again, building on probability, which was at junior cycle, some students love probability. I must say it was one of my favorite topics as a student myself, right? And some students are the opposite. You could have students who are brilliant, they love everything on paper one, and then they would say, I just cannot get my head around probability. But again, if you got someone who really likes it teaching it, as will be the case with these videos, it can just help, it can make it click for you. So again, you're looking here, I often say you could be a H1 student in paper one, and you could be a H4, 5, 6 student in probability. And if that's the case, you might be back looking at these junior cycle ordinary level videos just to get the basics into your head. And again, just that thing that if you were doing probability when COVID struck and all of a sudden then you never saw it again in junior cycle, it just might make sense to go back to these. But of course, then you're building up to the higher level stuff and the Bernoulli trials and the normal distribution, expected value, compound outcomes, all those things. Then the real difficult parts are in there as well. Okay, let me jump out of this here, and I'm going to go over now to the ones for junior cert. Okay, I'm just going to stop share for 1 second here while I do this. And the reason is because sometimes when I'm just tinkering around on the website, as I'm just kind of flicking into these things, I don't want to have any like data GDPR breaches here or anything like that, because obviously we have students enrolled on the course, could be using the course right now. So let me make sure I get this right. Okay, yeah. So, right. I'm clicking on this now, junior cycle ordinary level for the student who's in first year at the moment. And obviously, I'm going to share a screen here again. Oh, yes, and I see another question in there as well, and I will get to this. Okay, so here we go. For the student in first year, like you have got the, I'd say the junior cycle ordinary level package, right? Now when you're in second year, you might get junior cycle higher level, right? But at this stuff here, you can see you're talking about the basic concepts of probability, the likelihood scale, all those kind of things, and then your basic calculations, equally likely outcomes, rolling a dice, and so on and so forth. And then you got even some exam paper questions as well, right? And there's some there junior cycle, ordinary level, junior cycle, higher level. Okay. So again, let's say for some reason you are missing for a week of school, 2 weeks of school, or if you got an exam coming up in this stuff, like if you watch all those videos and you do those exercises, I guarantee it, you're going to be well prepared for the exam. Let me just click here on. There's a cute question came in. Okay, so question comes in is this. What would you recommend for first year students to get maximum points when they're explaining the answer? And this is true for first years and third years and sixth years and everyone. If you look at the state exams last year, third year and sixth year, there was more questions than ever before, which said, explain your answer, explain the rationale for your answer, explain your thinking, something like that. And you have to give the information, right? You have to explain. So the first thing, those guys who got 100% last year, they emphasized the importance of understanding the subject. And again, if you're looking back at these videos and listening to them, you're just getting an advantage over everybody else because these are explained well and pitched at the right level for students. If you have to explain something like, why is it unlikely that you'll roll a six on a die? You know, what I would always suggest is that you don't give like a really, really short answer for that. That you give a bit of detail in the answer. So you could say like there's only one six on a die and there's six numbers in total, so there's five numbers which will not be a success and only one number that will be a success, something like that. I'll just give this because the student asked this question, like he's looking to get maximum points on a question like that. In fairness, it's good thinking. I'm thinking back to the old junior cert scores. In the old junior cert, it used to be A, B, C, D, E, F, right? And an A was between 85 to 100, and a B was 70 to 85. I can think of 3 students offhand who got a B in their junior cert and got an A1 or a H1 in their leaving cert, so above 90. And in each case, what they did, in each case, all of those 3 lads was I'm going to say, in their own heads, they were so good, they didn't even need to write down the explanation. They'd be like, yeah, it's obvious. I'm hardly even going to write down the explanation for this. However, you always got to remember this for junior cert ordinary level, leaving cert higher level. The incorrect answer with no workings gets no marks. You have to show some workings. And the person correcting your exam does not know how brilliant you are. So you got to show them. You got to show what you know. So you got to, if it asks for an explanation, you got to give it, give the extra line. There's no such thing as negative marking in maths. So you won't, if you have the answer right in the first line, you're not going to lose it by writing more in the second line. Okay, let me just have a quick look here. And thank you. So do you cater for first years? Yeah, so it absolutely cater for first years. Like, so what we're looking at here is junior cycle ordinary level is the name of this package, right? And what this one is for, right? So I clicked into the probability part in that. But junior cycle ordinary level is basically your first year course. So that's covering everything that you're going to have in first year. You're unlikely to have gone past any of that. Okay. Anything more difficult than that. Okay. So this student comes back and says he got 93% in the exam because even though he had everything right, he hadn't shown enough workings. Okay, so that's the lesson. So Andrea tells me there are some teachers here tonight who've bought the whole thing for the whole package for um their schools. And if any of you would like to just put in a comment into the chat as how it's going or anything like that, or any difficulties or anything that's working well, I'll give you my own experience because, like I said, I've been using this in Hamilton High School since 2011, and I know the ups and downs of it all. Will say I always find myself like like that. I have first year groups, second year groups, sixth year higher level groups. There's different times I find when students will get really motivated to use it, particularly when the real exams are coming. But at that time, sometimes they want to just practice exam papers. I really find if you can get it embedded for students into their nightly, weekly use and learning for maths, it just makes a massive difference. I will say as well, I also show the videos up on the board, right? Partly because like some of them are so good. Just the one we saw there, it was a student there, Stephen, I think mentioned that or maybe Stephen's a teacher actually, maybe that's how he knew that video on the unit circle was so good. Like it's going to take me a pile of time to draw all that up on the board where it's already done. And then I'm pausing it, I'm explaining the key points, I'm taking questions from the class, and it works really well, and it's just, it's not the obviously, you've got to keep going through all the material as well. Like, you know what I mean? You gotta get the course done. We don't have time to be sitting back all the time relaxing. But it does, I find, work very well. Okay. A question comes in. A third year student. Okay. How should you approach starting out to approach the exam? Okay. Should it be focused on areas with the difficulty or do a general bit by bit approach till December and then the mocks? Yeah, I got you. So what I would say is this. And the nature of the junior cycle exam is a bit like Leaving Cert. The topics overlap inside the exam. But at this type of the year, it's very difficult to actually, you know, for a student to do that because you mightn't have learned trigonometry yet. What I would say is if you can get yourself to do these examples here and these questions, and do them bit by bit and break it down and just kind of tick it off like like we have an exam countdown which kicks in later in the year as well. Then like if you can get yourself to do that, you're just going to be so far ahead of the people who won't. It makes a massive difference. So for example here, if we look at this one, right? So the beauty of this is, right, for students who actually really want to get ahead, you have you see, you can yeah, click on your question. Of course, you can print it out, or you can just kind of do it on a bit of rough work paper. But you got the marking scheme as well, right there. Done. Boom. If you have it right, you just move on. That's what I find. And then if you didn't get it right and you don't understand from the marking scheme, then that's when you're watching the video. So that's how I find a lot of students use it. And again, like if because of the nature of how the whole thing is laid out, you can be ticking off sections for yourself and saying, yeah, okay, basic calculations, I have that one. Probability concepts, yeah, got that one. Okay. I had said to Dan that I'd try and stop talking at around quarter to because I find, people kind of generally get kind of what they need from it at that point. But if there's anyone who is bursting to ask a last question, then go for it. And while I'm just waiting, no, you're very welcome there, Sam. Um, again, what I would say is this: I'll go back to that first comment from the student. The more you use it, the more you want to use it. And that's something that I found myself as a teacher and also with the students themselves. That it's kind of there is a bit of habit required for it, that you get to say, oh yeah, I'll look up the maths tutor for that. I'll use that now to help prepare for this exam. But like that, when I'm finished here now, I must go over there inside my bag. So if I can reach over, I grab it. I must correct the exams from the lads. So 24 6-year exams. I must correct them now before the night is out. But they're good. I've looked through them. They're good. And why? Well, partly because I told him exactly what to do. I told him there what my guys had to do was look through, well, it was the stats stuff, right? But look through all of the stats parts from section 1 to 4. So for the teachers out there, and for students who are interested, but that is how I find it works really effectively. Our students will buy into doing it. That I told them, okay, statistics 1, 2, 3, 4. If you can do everything that's on those videos, you're sorted for the exam that we did today. And I know myself, they watched them over the weekend. Okay, that is where I'm going to leave it. I will say, you know, I'm a firm believer that maths can really come together and click for students, over time, even for students who struggled with it a long time. My experience tells me that to be true and shows that to be true. But it doesn't happen all by itself. You gotta put in the work. There is a gap because of COVID and various things, and something has to happen for people to bridge that gap. And I think the maths tutor is the best thing out there for